out today on such short notice. All of us are here as a little bit of a surprise. Last night, we all learned that Commissioner Pete Grannis had been fired as the Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Conservation after serving in a very distinguished way in that position since, I believe, March of 2007 is when his confirmation was final. Pete's just done an exemplary job at the DEC during his time there, and during his entire career in public service, which spans over 3 decades, includes a long time in the State Assembly, as well as he got his start in the Department of Environmental Conservation during that department's very early days. Today, we're all saddened and a bit alarmed by the developments of last evening. Pete was, I think, similarly surprised when he received a phone call while being honored by the New York Water Environment Association at an event in Saratoga last night for his efforts on behalf of the state of New York, to receive a call from the governor's secretary, Larry Schwartz, announcing that he had been terminated. Environmental groups, the Public Employees Federation, good government organizations alike are here today to express our outrage with Governor Patterson's decision to terminate Pete Grannis, especially under the conditions that Pete was terminated. Just to relay off a few quick facts about the agency. The agency's been under duress for quite some time. Just this year, it lost 260 people to early retirement, and an additional 209 staff have been slated for layoffs, a process that the commissioner and his staff were going through to identify. The agency is actually down about 23% in its staff just since 2007, 2008. They've been operating in triage mode for several years now. DEC is bearing a full 10% of the total state layoff, despite accounting for only 2.5% of the state workforce. So these disproportionate cuts are really harmful to DEC's overall operations, but it shows that the environmental agencies are being singled out by Governor Patterson for harsher treatment than other state agencies. And over the last 2.5 years, the agency has lost 595 employees, 16% of its total workforce. So Pete was already overseeing an agency in duress, and his termination is certainly no cause for celebration. I'd like to just turn it over to a few of our colleagues to express some of our concerns and some of our thoughts and where we go from here, particularly what is the next governor going to do to address this agency crisis. So first, I'd like to welcome Wayne Barrett from PEF-ENCON, who represents the employees.
Good afternoon. I'm here on behalf of PEF-ENCON, the Division 169, the professional, scientific, and technical staff. It's part of the Public Employees Federation that works throughout the central office and the regional office in New York State. We're down to 1,700 people at maximum. We're rapidly losing people. We're a fraction of the workforce we were, as Rob mentioned earlier. This firing comes at a very critically important time when DEC is facing decisions on a number of critical environmental issues that, if not handled professionally and competently, can have severe negative environmental and public health and safety impacts. We find it abhorrent that the governor and his staff fired our commissioner without a hint, elementary considerations of due process, which is a strong principle of the labor movement and the American judicial system. He didn't even have an opportunity to speak directly with the governor, and it's despicable that the governor didn't give him a chance to speak to him himself. The other things, that memo that supposedly that started all this, that was released to the public, is not anything new. No one in the public, no one in the legislature, no one in the press should be surprised by that. You know, environmental groups, our colleagues, and PEF-ENCON have been making these arguments for years before in legislative hearings. We're so short-staffed in the last 20 years, but particularly in the last 10, with every year new statutory and regulatory responsibilities added to our mission. None are ever taken away, and we're never given any more staff to handle that. It's almost criminal to present to the public that we're capable of fulfilling our mission, statutory responsibilities. A lot of our staff are operating by drive-by inspections and triage management. That can't go on, And it's, the press should help communicate that information to the public and ask and demand that the governor immediately reinstate Pete Grannis. Thank you.
Well said. Next, joining us is Laura Height from the New York Public Interest Research Group.
Our groups are outraged at the dismissal of Pete Grannis so perfunctorily for the mere fact of telling the truth. This seems to be an MO for the Patterson administration. Just yesterday, the Inspector General released a scathing report showing how the Patterson administration ignored the advice of its professional staff with regard to the selection of the Adirondack BLTs. And once again, this is information that professional staff has brought to light that the Patterson administration wants to suppress. They don't want the public to know the impacts of their policy decisions. And the impacts of these cuts at DEC are severe. No one knows better than Pete Grannis what these impacts were. He worked for the DEC back in the 1970s. For over 30 years, he fought for environmental laws as a champion in the New York State Assembly. He's been at the helm of this agency for the past 3 years. And he has done tremendous work with very few resources. When someone like Pete Grannis says that this agency is hanging on by a thread, people ought to listen. Instead, Patterson's administration fired him. This is absolutely inappropriate. And the irony of this is that because of this heavy-handed stance taken by the governor's secretary, Larry Schwartz, more people will read this memo than ever before. And more people will see reason to be alarmed by what Pete Grannis has been talking about. That said, we can't wait till the next administration to reverse the wrongs. We have an immediate need for a strong leadership at the helm of DEC. And therefore, we're calling on Governor Patterson to reverse this decision and immediately reinstate Pete Grannis as Commissioner of DEC. And further, my organization recommends that there be a close look at Larry Schwartz, given the pattern from the Inspector General's report and this, that indicate there might be information that he is not sharing or not reasonably following that's been provided to him by professional staff. Thank you.
Next is John Sheehan from the Adirondack Council.
The Adirondack Council is very concerned over the firing of Pete Grannis for essentially telling the public the truth about the state of New York's environment. Over the past year and a half, we've seen extremely deep cuts made to the Department of Environmental Conservation's budget. At the same time, the Adirondack Park Agency, the Parks Department, Department of State, other environmental agencies, including the Department of Agriculture, Soil and Water Conservation programs, have all suffered severe cuts in their funding. All of this is having a direct impact on the health of New York State residents and will continue to have an impact for a generation to come. We've seen this year clean air monitoring stations, essentially acid rain monitoring stations in the Western Adirondacks be closed because we didn't have the money to continue running them. These are the stations that we rely upon for information about whether we're recovering from acid rain in the Adirondacks or not. They're the things that help us guide future decisions on how much pollution we should cut, how we're going to keep the public safe. Without rangers in the field, without environmental conservation officers out keeping an eye on our public resources, we've essentially just opened season for poaching in the Adirondacks. We've made it possible for people to steal timber from the forest preserve because, frankly, there won't be very many people watching. This is a disgraceful situation, one in which the governor has a responsibility to the public to protect the environment, to protect the life support system that sustains us all. We're not just talking about animals and fish, we're talking about human beings and whether they're going to be healthy and grow up healthy in New York State. That's something that we depend on our governor to make sure it happens. But he's letting us down. We think that firing Pete Grannis was a sad punctuation mark on a terrible environmental record. And we hope that within the last couple of months that the governor will find it within his power not to do any more harm to the environment. Thank you very much.